Well, I'm waiting for it to start. It's not 7 yet.
We walked all the way up to the pancake house today.
Oh my goodness. Hey, buddy. Yeah. Yeah. Oh boy. You probably want your treats, don't you? Well, hand me a couple of treats. Well, no, Mimi's going to get them for me.
More of these.
Come here, buddy. Sit. Up here. No, up here. Up here, buddy. Hey, up here.
Was he playing some music? So I guess when we get the meetings, we'll just table those till next meeting, and then get those both approved. Well, that, yeah.
Can't hear
We're
anything.
at 30, almost 32. I am too. That's one of the things that we've decided now that we're renting. It's like, okay, when we. Oh, that one's slow? Okay. Good evening and welcome to the January 19th, 2022 Planning and Zoning meeting. At this time, I would ask that anyone please turn off or mute all cell phones, any electrical devices. Appreciate that. So please stand for the pledge, please join the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Applications for conditional use permits and rezoning requests we heard during tonight's meeting, and the commission will vote on these applications and make a recommendation to the county council. The applications will then be scheduled to be introduced before the county council at the Monday, February 14th, 2022 county council meeting. Public comment for conditional use permit request will be taken during tonight's meeting and at the council meeting on Monday, February 14th, 2022. Public comment on conditional use applications will not be taken at any meeting of the county council held thereafter. Applications for preliminary plats heard during tonight's meeting will also be voted on by the Planning and Zoning Commission during the meeting. The vote on preliminary plats is final. Only a recommendation for denial of a preliminary plat will be heard before the county council at their Monday, February 14th, 2022 meeting. The following documents are introduced as a matter of record for this evening's public hearing and regular meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission. The Unified Development Ordinance of St. Charles County, including zoning maps, the year 2030 master plan for the St. Charles County, which includes the year 2030 future land use plan map. Do I have a motion to open?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
So first order of business, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Thank you. Oh,
So let's ask who's on. Do we know who's on?
okay, who's remote here? I see Roger. Anyone else?
Yeah.
And Jennifer. Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. First order of business tonight is the election of new officers for the 2022 Planning and Zoning year. By county ordinance, it's required that once a year we have these elections. There's 3 offices. There's the chair, who obviously will lead the meetings, the vice chair, who essentially will, if the chair is not present, will lead the meeting, and the secretary. So the current officers are Roger Ellis, chair, myself as vice chair, and Tracy Bamer as the secretary. So do we have any nominations here for the offices to be held this following year?
I have a motion. I make a motion to retain the current slate of officers.
Roger, would you be okay with that?
I'm okay.
Okay.
Okay, and who's this?
So we have to do each one.
Okay, so, and I'm okay as,
I swear, I haven't
Vice
talked to Roger,
chair.
so I don't know.
okay, he said he would be, and Tracy is not here, it appears.
Yeah, we can still nominate her and vote on her.
But I guess we would, sounds like we've, okay, so the nominations are to keep the current officers of Roger Ellis, chair, myself, Kevin Cleary, vice chair, and Tracy Bamer as the secretary. Do I have a motion on that?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, keep that slate this next year. We'll inform Tracy. So just how the kind of logistics of tonight's meeting, what we'll do is I will read the application into the public record, and then we'll defer to the county staff for their recommendations, what their process was to that recommendation. And then after they have completed their presentation, the applicant will come forward. They'll give their presentation. And of course, at any point, any of the people on the commission can ask questions. When they've completed that, we will then open it to public hearing. Anyone from the public can come up and make a comment. And after all the members of the public have made their comments, we will then close that section. The public will then be finished, and we will bring up the applicant. Again, anybody on the commission can ask for additional questions, clarifications. We'll then bring it back to the commission, and we will then take a vote on the application or any amendments to the application. So, stating that, we will get started here. The first application is RZ 21-20. The property owner is Robert Penderglass. The current zoning is A, agricultural district with density floodway and floodway fringe overlay districts. The requested zoning is RF, which is riverfront district with density floodway and floodway fringe overlay districts. The 2030 master plan recommends agricultural uses.
Is now joining.
Okay, the parcel size is 5.0 acres. The location is at the terminus of a private drive on the north side of Highway B, approximately 2,200 feet east of Highway C. It's in County Council District 1. Staff, please give us your thoughts on this.
All right, good evening. This property, as mentioned, is 5 acres, located right on the shore of the Mississippi. A correction is this is not density floodway. This is actual floodway of the Mississippi. It is being located right there at the right on the Mississippi shore. It is currently zoned agricultural, as most of the ground is, and was rezoned in 1999 with the adoption of the Unified Development Ordinance. Previously, the properties around there, such as the campgrounds, were zoned recreational use. The agricultural use does allow for the development of a residence, any of the permissive uses in agricultural zoning. This applicant intends to continue the use of the campground. With the rezoning to riverfront, this does allow them to submit a site plan if any changes are made. Currently, under the agricultural zoning, and you saw that there were several conditional uses on here for the expansion of the campground. But currently, under agricultural zoning, anytime any changes are made that are considered substantial, the applicant would have to come back and go through hearings with the commission and with county council for a conditional use permit. With the rezoning, as we've done with other campground areas, any changes or any developments, any upgrades, anything like that can be reviewed via a site plan update with the staff, planning and zoning staff. The applicant has submitted a site plan update pending approval of this rezoning currently. So with that, staff is recommending that the commission recommend approval of this application to the council.
So with this zoning, would that allow any commercial use with changing the zoning? For instance, a marina or some type of use like that?
Well, a marina is currently allowed in agricultural zoning.
Oh, it is on the agricultural?
Anytime we get into commercial development of a marina, things such as fueling and anything
Right.
like that. That I would have to check on that, whether or not that's conditional in the riverfront district, but in agricultural, some of that is conditional.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, we'd ask the applicant to please come forward.
Not here.
Okay, the applicant is not here. So, I guess everyone at this point, any discussion here among the commissioners? Anybody have any comments or thoughts on what is being proposed?
Let's open up to the public. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. Yeah, this now opens up to the public. Please come up. I apologize. Rookie mistake. Please fill out a card, a speaker card too. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under pains and penalty of law?
I do.
Please state your name and record and address for county records.
Thank you very much, members of the Planning and Zoning Commission. My name is Arnie C. A.C. Dienoff, County Public Advocate. Mailing address is P.O. Box 1535, O'Fallon. I understand what the applicant is looking for. Unfortunately, I came here tonight to hear the applicant and hear exactly what they propose, or if they propose any changes. I guess according to staff, they're just trying to make site plan changes without going through the planning and zoning and county council process. There's a couple issues that I'd like to bring to the attention of the commissioners. As we all know, this area tends to flood depending on the year. And so after looking at the photos, there's a lot of issues that could be potential problems. So on this property are porta potties, propane tanks, park benches, trash dumpsters, trash barrels. So I would like to see some type of condition saying that they have to tie it down a certain amount of feet into the ground, maybe by a chain or some type of situation, so when the flood comes, that we don't have them going down the river or causing other problems or lodging into levees or blocking up the waterways. So that's one condition that I'd like to recommend as an amendment to the application if you decide to approve it without hearing from the applicant. Since the applicant isn't here, I'd recommend that the Planning and Zoning Commission table this issue until next month. I think it should be a requirement or prerequisite that the applicant appear and make their proposal before you as appointed officials, so there can be questions asked and it can be documented properly for the record. As we all know, this area does flood. There are some concerns about contamination of the waterways. Do they hold storage tanks? Do they hold gasoline? Do they hold oil or other chemical storage on the property? And those are of environmental concerns when we have a flood. And I'd like the commission to address those in a condition also. There's just a few unknowns here. And again, I ask that you table it till next month so we can hear from the applicant. But I really think that those concerns of what they store in the property in terms of hazardous materials, gasoline, oil, chemicals, they really those need to be known to the public and to the Fire Protection District. Those are my comments, Mr. Chairman. I'll entertain any questions, or otherwise I'll have a seat.
Okay, any questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments? Okay, at this point, we will close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission.
So I'm a little curious why the applicant isn't here. Is there some reason? I mean, he just thinks it's going to go through, or do you know? Okay. You haven't heard from him, though, or anything about not being here?
I have not.
Okay.
Well, a suggestion has been made to table till we have the applicant here.
We've done this before, though, haven't we, for other properties, where we've changed some of the zoning for these types of things?
Yes, we have.
Yeah.
Staff has been recommending to, as the number of homes are being reduced voluntarily, I might add, along the Mississippi, we are trying to encourage recreational use, and this type of zoning does encourage that type of use.
All right.
What about on this type of thing where there is a campground and perhaps tanks or things. Is there any ordinance that's part of that that would require the things like the tanks or porta potties or whatever to be tethered or anchored to something? Does anybody know if that's, Robert, I see you.
Well, during the site plan review, that's where there would be a strict review on that. I can tell you there's no propane tanks on
Okay.
this property. If there's porta potties, typically, those are noted also on the site plan, but the provider will make sure that, the thing about the Mississippi is you have notice. You get at least a week, if not 2 weeks, notice that it's coming up. And you
Right.
can follow the gauges up the river and know when to be prepared. They will pull everything out, but things like that can be added to the site plan, and we'll just,
But that would be done on site review, and that's where
During
you would
site
add those
review.
comments in.
yeah. And I might add, the building division would also be involved on the site plan review, and they're going to make sure that there is potable water, and make sure that there is dumping facilities
Okay.
and things of that nature. That's some of the review that will be done with the site plan.
Okay, okay. I think that addresses the issues raised. So do we have any comments or recommendations on this particular application, R21-20?
And we didn't receive any letters from anybody down there?
Oh, I'm sorry, no letters were received.
Okay.
Okay,
Kevin?
Yes.
Yeah, this is a fairly common thing in the last, 2 or 3 years. I don't know how many of these we've seen.
Right.
Because people, once this new, zoning came in, there's a large number of folks down there that have decided that this is the best way to do it.
right,
And we haven't seen any problems.
right. I think in the last 2 years, we've approved maybe 2 or 3 of them
Yeah.
similar to this.
Yeah, so.
Okay. So do we have any,
I'll make a
Motion?
motion to approve RZ 21-20.
okay. Okay, the motion has been made and seconded. Mr. Ellis?
Yes.
Mr. Fromm?
Yes.
Mr. Cornwell?
Yes.
Mr. Jackson?
Yes.
Ms. Barr? Okay, I guess. Yes, okay. Ms. Bamer?
She's not here.
Okay. Mr. Shell?
Yes.
And I vote yes, too.
You forgot me.
Oh, Mr. Hollander?
Yes.
Sorry about that, Terry.
It's all right.
All right, so the motion passes 8-0. Okay, thank you, that passes. All right, the next item on the agenda is let me get back to is a preliminary plat for Autumn Hollow, 910 East Highway N. The application is PRE 21-14. Property owner is R. Stephen and Catherine M. Barnett, and Donald C. and Mary Ann Mollison. The applicant and developer is Lombardo Homes of St. Louis, LLC. The engineer is the Sterling Company. The property zoning currently is R3B, multifamily residential district, and that's on 29.55 acres, and R1E, single-family residential district, and that's on 47.11 acres. The proposed lots is 110 lots, which would be comprised of 418 dwellings. The parcel size is 76.67 acres. Its location is on the south side of Highway N, approximately 900 feet east of Gallup Lane, near the cities of Wentzville, O'Fallon, and Lake St. Louis. It's in County District 2. Staff.
Okay, if you could, thank you, appreciate it. What you have displayed here is actually the overall plan for the landscaping, but it's also handy for me to talk about, and they'll the applicants, I'm sure, will have their own exhibits, but I just wanted to point out a few things, and this would be, I'll use this as a visual aid. The project overall, as you mentioned, includes actually 416 dwellings, including multifamily, attached villas, and single-family parcels. And so it includes kind of a range of residential uses. The development trends in the area and also pertinent infrastructure, I'll give you a short overview. The 2030 master plan, as you may remember, envisions that the primary growth quarter, I'll call it, for unincorporated St. Charles County for the next 20 years is going to be Highway N. The Highway N corridor is really where much of that unincorporated county's growth is projected to happen. That is being made possible in part not just by transportation improvements like Highway N, but also by sanitary sewer service. So Duckett Creek Sanitary District recently announced that they're building a new sewage treatment plant on Darting Creek near Hopewell Road, really just south of this property. And so that has allowed that potential growth to be realized. And in fact, not only do we have the current Autumn Hollow plat, but also an adjoining plat called the Harvest at Hopewell Road in the city of O'Fallon, which is double this development size. So altogether, when you take all of those two projects together, you're talking about 1,300 homes, and the two different projects are integrated. As you can see on the subdivision plat, on the darker lines indicate the subdivision plat that we're talking about. And to the, I guess that would be east or towards the bottom, that new subdivision would be in the city of O'Fallon. And so one of the reasons that there has been a delay in your review of this is we wanted to make sure that we want to coordinate between the city of O'Fallon, St. Charles County, and MoDOT to try and make sure that these projects are integrated in terms of transportation and other improvements. So that's been really helpful. At tonight's meeting, I feel confident that the project can certainly happen in an integrated way in terms of transportation improvements. Since this was first scheduled, a revised trip generation, or I'm sorry, traffic study was prepared that includes both this development and the development to the east, the Harvest at Hopewell. So the traffic plan that's part of your packet does reflect both of these developments. The zoning overall allows this development by right so long as it meets all of the development requirements of the subdivision regulations. And so that's what we're here to talk about tonight, is really the preliminary plat and the subdivision regulations. The zoning is in place, the development densities are conforming to that zoning, so really we're here to talk about the subdivision of land and the improvements. You may want to know that in terms of natural conditions, the property is bisected east to west with this natural watercourse, and much of the property had been farmed, but that natural watercourse is where there was some existing tree stands left, and there's some vegetative buffer requirements along the natural watercourse. Also, that picks up the largest opportunity to preserve trees and meet the meet the county's tree preservation requirements. So the developers have been working over the last several months very hard on trying to reduce removal of trees and meet the county's tree preservation requirements. So I would say very recently, the most recent plans have received approval from the community development director in terms of the tree preservation plan and what I'll call the mitigation plan. What I mean by that is the county has, in our ordinance, certain tree preservation requirements, And if you can't meet those tree preservation requirements, you can ask the community development director for the ability to mitigate trees that would be removed. And so they're showing a total of 593 mitigation trees, I'll call them, planted within common ground and lots for this subdivision. And that's the way they're making up for about an acre of tree removal that would otherwise be required. Now, you may or may not know this, but under the county's highway department standards, trees are not allowed in rights-of-way, in county rights-of-way. So they're proposing that these 593 mitigation trees be planted in common ground and on private lots. And you'll notice before you the plan that this actually shows where all the trees would be planted. And we're talking about substantial trees, 2.5-inch caliper trees for deciduous trees. And I think for coniferous trees, it's minimum of 6 foot in height. In terms of transportation, quickly, the red dot that I'm showing you is Highway N. Highway N is currently undergoing study with MoDOT in terms of what its future will look like. And those improvements that are planned for that corridor. The environmental study, the preliminary preferred route for Highway N is indeed this current corridor. And so they're looking at widening it from 2 lanes to 4 lanes, I believe with a turn lane as well. And so the developers have been working closely with MoDOT officials, City of O'Fallon, St. Charles County, including the County Road Board and the Highway Department, to ensure that this development can accommodate that widening. What's shown on here is the L4 area. Those would be apartments. L3 would be attached villas. L2 and L1 would be single-family areas. And I would note that each one of those areas, I'll call them pods, would have 2 points of access. So every one of these would have 2 points of access, each one of those pods, L4, L3, L2, and L1. Points of connection with the outside development, you have Highway N, you have 2 points of connection with future north-south, I guess I'll call that a major collector street. And then finally, on the south side, you have Dyer Road, which is shown in the county's future arterial roadway plan that is slated to be extended, and they are planning to extend what here is labeled, I think it's Street D, either Street A or Street D, to this the future Dyer Road extension. So in the end, what you'll have is a development, I think, that's well integrated with expected development around it, anticipated development around it. The outstanding issues that were identified in the staff report, in the written staff report, one of those has now been resolved. So that's the tree preservation plan. That their alternative plan has been received approval by the community development director. Another important issue is the street connection to Highway N. So if you look closely at your plans, you'll notice that that street is actually off-site. It's just outside of this plat. And typically how land is dedicated to the county is through the final plat. The face of the plat will say the streets hereby shown on this plat, or the streets shown on this plat are hereby dedicated to the county in perpetuity for street roadway purposes. Well, if it's not on the plat, how does it get dedicated? And how do you ensure that they'll have access? I think the answer is that the property next door, STL Storage, you may recall that from a few months ago where we reviewed that for their, in fact, that might have been your first meeting, Jamal, I'm trying to remember. But that conditional use permit in their concept plan took into account that the development, the street from this development will be on their property, so to speak. In fact, they've turned in a site plan, they've submitted that to the county for our review. They're showing this street to be built on their property. But to provide some assurances, I would say that at the time of the subdivision improvement plan stage, after the preliminary plat approval, by that time, I think we should have some sort of written assurances that the street will be approved on what I'll call the neighboring property. To explain what is the subdivision improvement plan stage, if you think of platting process as a sandwich, you have the preliminary plat, which is a piece of bread, and the final plat, which is a piece of bread. In the middle of those two things that are approved, you have what I'll call the subdivision improvement plans. Subdivision improvement plans come between those two plats, and it is a very technical engineering sort of document that ensures that it will, that the subdivision will function and will be designed and built according to the county's technical requirements. It deals with everything from, pavement thickness and the composition of the concrete, and et cetera, et cetera. Let's see. One other issue that is important is that there are two streets in this plan that would normally terminate in a cul-de-sac, and they're showing that as hammerhead turnarounds. And those two streets are ending on that natural water course and that tree buffer. The reason, as I understand it, that they're proposing to use the hammerhead turnaround instead of a cul-de-sac turnaround, the typical cul-de-sac turnaround, is to avoid encroaching on that tree preservation area and the natural water course and the vegetative buffer, because they're so close to meeting they tried so hard to meet the tree preservation requirements that this is one of the ways that they can help ensure that. So what that would mean is, in order for this plat to be approved, they would need a variance from the county council for this plat to be approved, meaning that you all would vote on this, and then if it were voted in favor, it would go to the county council and they would vote on it as well. And it would be, ultimately, the county council would need to also approve the variances. Let's see. The variance criteria in our ordinance is essentially, it's if there are practical difficulties caused by the land, such as topographic conditions, the tract size or shape. So in my mind, it's the fact that meeting the tree preservation requirements is so difficult for a couple of reasons. And if you'd like any further information on that or more in the depth, feel free to ask and I can talk about that.
Well, there's a letter in here that we just had received today.
Right. And that letter's from Mike Horbert,
Right.
the Community Development Director, where he's accepting their proposal for
Okay.
meeting the tree preservation requirements. If I could just comment briefly, the county's tree preservation requirements work, it's much more easy to meet them when you have like 5-acre lots or 3-acre lots. But when you get into the really smaller lots and there's much more grading involved, it's a lot harder to meet tree preservation requirements. Existing tree stands, many don't know this, but the tree roots are very sensitive to putting any dirt over you could put 6 inches of dirt over tree roots and you'll kill the tree eventually. Within a few years, it'll die. They just do not they need to have exposure the root system needs exposure to air. So when you have areas with small lots, and also the fact that, as I understand it, they're hoping that many of the homes will be zero-step homes, meaning that there's more grading involved, and it's really harder to get the grade just right. And I think those are some of the reasons that were mentioned to me in terms of the challenges of meeting tree preservation requirements.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm still confused. How are they getting out of this? There's nothing else out there. I mean, I drove out today and there's
Yeah.
The other development's not there. How are they getting out of here if this is built before the other subdivisions are built? Are they just coming out on in and that's it? They can't, can they? Explain it to me.
This will
I
have
don't
to be
know.
built in concert with the
Oh, it's gonna
development
go
next
into
door.
Okay, and has the other one been approved in, I guess it's Wentzville?
O'Fallon,
Okay.
as I understand it, they've received preliminary approval from the
Okay.
county council. They have a planned unit development, as I understand it, they're doing it under.
Okay.
Also, obviously, this will be contingent upon the sanitary sewer availability from Duckett Creek.
Okay.
And that's not going to happen for a couple of years, but all of this is taking place in anticipation of sanitary sewer service being made available.
So I have a few questions. So figuring 1,300 plus residents, figuring most households have 2 cars, is the county concerned about dumping 2,600 cars on the, right at the end there?
Well, that's why the traffic study was performed, and that's one of the reasons for the delay, frankly, is we wanted to ensure that the traffic study would support what sort of improvements need to be made. So the traffic study recommends, let me make sure I've got this right, certain improvements, including turn lanes, deceleration lanes, traffic signals, and pavement restriping that would be made off-site, including the highway in corridor, we're thinking Hopewell Road. And those improvements would help route traffic and ensure traffic.
Okay, so they're anticipating putting a couple of stoplights along N right through there.
Right, yeah, turn lanes, deceleration lanes, restriping, stoplights.
And so obviously that'll monitor traffic coming out of the developments. I'm just thinking people turning left out of the subdivision onto N with traffic going 55, 60 miles an hour. And
That specifically, that intersection has been looked at with MoDOT, and they're going to control whether or not they can have full access or three-quarters access or whatever the access is going to be. The traffic study feeds into that question.
So the traffic, it's not really conclusive at this point then, what exactly they're going to do there. Is that right? Do I
No,
understand?
it is, I just don't know. I can't remember if I think it's three-quarter, as I understand it, three-quarter access at that intersection. But the applicants can tell you
Okay,
certainly.
okay. And then you mentioned the driveway, or the road being, is it going to be a public road? You said it's on the other one, and then they're
Yeah.
trying to, so it will, they're not really dedicating, they're actually buying that or whatever for it to be a public access to the property, the one where the storage is.
Oh, where
currently.
STL storage is
Yeah.
located? As I understand it, that will be a public street, and that will need to be dedicated. So if that's a public street, it'll need to be dedicated to.
And it would
St.
have to be
Charles County.
dedicated, though, by the adjoining property owner, correct?
It would be dedicated by whomever either owns the property or owns a permanent easement of access that would be written such that it will allow vehicular access, or for roadway purposes, I should say.
Okay, and I did see on here that the developers have submitted the plan to the fire district for those, I guess you call them hammerhead
Right.
turnarounds. What about the school district? Are they comfortable with backing buses around through there?
As I understand it, yes, yeah.
Have we heard from them in any way?
We've, I can't remember the communication specifically, but I know that they were notified. And they will often let us know about certain streets with cul-de-sacs or not cul-de-sacs. And for instance, if the cul-de-sac is not large enough at the end, they won't send buses down that street. What will happen is the students will walk to the nearest intersection, so and they won't go down that street. So it's possible that the applicants can tell us for sure, but it's possible that the school buses may not go down those short cul-de-sacs with the hammerhead turnarounds.
So if they were made cul-de-sacs,
Yeah.
both of them, how many sites would the developer lose? I mean, that's probably really the main concern here from the developer's point of view is the number of lots. Do we know anything about
They
that?
could tell you that, but
Okay.
in my thinking, I think it's encroachment on that vegetative buffer and the loss of trees. When they first started this, it looked like that they were going to lose a lot more trees than they're showing now. But little by little, they found ways to keep reducing the tree removal, and they're down to this point here.
Okay, and I guess some that probably ask the developers, but you're going to be putting a lot of additional water into that natural water course. What ways are there going to be, what kind of means are they taking to, I guess, to slow the water down? Because that's going to cause a lot of erosion downstream from that.
Yeah.
And a lot of eating away at the banks and all those trees that you're putting in. So what kind of means are being taken there?
They can give you some details, but first of all, that's one of the reasons for the vegetative buffer. They're also providing stormwater detention along that natural water course. They're having common ground along that water course. And also, the project will need the counties not only meet the requirements for stormwater, but also water quality, water cleanliness.
Gotcha.
So they'll need to address that as well.
Okay.
Now, the subdivision to the east, they have, as I understand it, they have kind of a, I'll call it a common ground or a amenity along that natural water course, and they're doing some different things with that. It might be an area for people to meet. As I understand it, there may be an area for like food trucks or public events, or events, I should say.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions? Anyone online, Jennifer or Roger, have any questions?
Robert, the intersection of Hopewell and Ian is part of the road improvement to sort of take the hook out of Hopewell.
Yes. Yeah, to the east of this. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, right as you're coming up Hopewell, right to Ian and trying to make a right or left, and the right's not too bad, but the left is a little dangerous because the road bends to the right. They're going to straighten that section.
As I understand it, yes, there's going to be some straightening going on at that location.
Because best I remember, isn't there a fire station right at that intersection?
Yes. There is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ambulance, yeah.
Yeah.
The ambulance. Okay. Jennifer, do you have any questions? Okay, at this point, we'll, thanks,
Sure.
Robert, we'll ask the applicant to come forward. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under pains and penalty of perjury?
I do.
Please state your name and address for the public records.
Doug Nance with Lombardo Homes, 4 Research Park, St. Charles, Missouri, 63304.
Okay, Doug, please go ahead.
Good evening, Commission. This thing. There we go. Autumn Hollow, it's a 416-unit subdivision that we're proposing. We have 180 apartment, 3-story apartment complex, 130 villas, and 106 single-family homes. Some of the comments that came up was with the traffic, so it is a 3-quarter entrance there at Highway N.
Could you explain what that means? I'm not sure what that
So right there at
three-quarters
Highway N,
means.
basically it means no left out. So there'll be no left-hand turn in, it'll be right in, left in off of Highway N into there, but
Okay.
no left out.
I see.
So the goal of that traffic study, when we talked with all the different municipalities and road boards and MoDOT, was to push traffic to the new Hopewell intersection, which is pretty much done now. There's no light there yet, but from my understanding, I think in the future there is a plan for a light.
Okay.
But so the goal is to push that traffic down through our subdivision and out to, this is Harvest right here, this parkway that comes over to Highway N. This here is another entrance, but it's a right in, right out only, I believe. So all the traffic from our subdivision that needs to come out to make a left on Highway N will be pushed through Harvest on this new parkway that will be being installed and out to Hopewell Road, which will eventually connect down to Highway N to make your left-hand turn or your right at the light, depending on. And most of the traffic back here is going to push that way to Hopewell. Some of the apartment individuals will come out and make a right, but most of this, especially the rear portion of is going to go out that Hopewell. So that's part of that traffic study that came out.
Gotcha.
Again, Deer Road will extend down. The county has a plan for that. And then this will be our second entrance to the south also.
I got it now.
That will push out to Harvest.
Okay.
The plan is, this will be done in conjunction with Harvest. The plan obviously has to get built by Duckett Creek, and then sewers have to be extended up to our property from there. So once Harvest gets all that, starts putting the infrastructure in for the road, then our development would start. So we're probably looking 2 years right now.
Okay.
Fourth quarter, I believe, is when Duckett Creek has planned to actually start some of the construction and start doing some of this stuff. But it's an 18-month build time, I believe, for them to build that plant. So we're looking at, like I said, 2 years from now. Right now, for the next year, we'd start doing some of our, if we get approval from you all and from council, we'd start moving into the improvement plans to start getting some things going on that end so that we're ready when Duckett does get all their stuff together. Tree preservation, as you know, as you can see, this is a very unique site. You're constrained by the property lines to the east and to the west. The natural waterway here is a good tree buffer between two residentials. And then we're offering the tree preservation of planting 593 mitigation trees. Per the county ordinance when we met, the amount of mitigation trees that would need to be planted based off the 1.1 acres that we are over would actually be 480 mitigation trees. So we're well over the mitigation requirements by the county, so we're adding even more trees than what's being required per that ordinance as well. Robert went through some of the tree plans. You can see the yellow circles are going to be your it's going to be some of the mitigation of the trees and where they're being planted around. You're going to have street trees as normal, but then around the common ground areas, you're going to have this. There's a buffer also being left to the south and to the east along this parkway. So there's a natural buffer being between the houses and the parkway. And then there is detention here on the southern portion, which will be part of that water quality and stop erosion from the bank to control that water runoff. In addition, you'll have a natural absorption also in that'll allow that for water quality in that buffer there. And then as you move north, we have some more. Again, here's the natural waterway, another buffer. That natural buffer, tree buffer that we aren't clearing, stays against the parkway again. And then you can see all our plantings up and around between. So you got a nice buffer in here between the villas and the single-family home. And then lots of trees being planted up along the main thoroughfare that comes through the apartments and the villas down through the single family. And then again, more trees against STL storage property to the north that you'll have. And then along the main road coming out to the entrance. And then a buffer along the highway as well to the apartments. As far as the entrance goes off of Highway N, we have partnered with STL Storage. We've been in contact with them. I have email communication where we have stated that we will install that entrance when we go to our development, and they are going to dedicate that right away to the county so that we can actually build that. We'll do a formal, if needed, if the council and commission would like, we can do a formal development agreement just stating that we are going to install that for them as well. This is the clubhouse for the apartments up to the north, right on Highway N. That's what they're going to look like. You have masonry and hardy siding on these as well. They're 1 and 2 bedroom high-end apartments. They range anywhere from 780 square feet to 1,020 square feet. So you got those. These are the villas. They're 4 and 6-plex villas. They're 2 bedroom as well, high-end finishes. And they range from 1,300 to 1,700 square feet. And then the Lombardo Homes side, which is the single family. that we will be doing, just a couple renderings that we have. And I'll be happy to answer any questions the commission might have.
Well, again, I'd like to understand a little bit more on that. So those retention areas, now that water will be more like a dam situation that will hold a certain water and the water will spill over? Or is it released at a certain rate back into the
So
creek?
we'll follow the St. Charles County water quality standards and retain what is required. But yes, basically, it's going to has to retain so much water per the area that's collecting.
I got you.
And then has to be released at a certain
Okay,
time.
okay.
And then there's certain water quality standards in addition to that have to be followed as well. But we had an actual call today with Rich Necco to discuss the water quality standards
Gotcha.
for this project.
Okay, very good. And then on the Hammerhead turnarounds, how many lots would you lose if you
We'd
did
probably lose
it?
anywhere from 9 to 12 lots if we had to go put those hammerheads in. Originally, before the tree preservation and this waterway, let's see if I can get a good picture of it that's blown up. So this road right here, and then the road right here where you have hammerheads at and on both sides. Originally, we connected these. We got rid of this one because of the high water mark and the issues that came with that. And then down here, we had this originally connecting here for the tree preservation. We pulled it out to gain more trees, and then we went with the hammerhead. And when you look at the way the traffic flows on this, there's like two houses right here on that hammerhead that would actually have to do it because traffic's not going to go down that way. There would be dead end signs and other signs that say no outlet also, but most of the traffic's coming down the parkway and through here or through this other street but this is your connection right here to Harvest Road that gets you over to, and then on the other side too, it's basically just this group of houses right here that would use it. There's no thoroughfare of people coming off the Harvest Parkway that would want to go here. So we don't feel like with the traffic that there's a whole lot of cars that are going to be
Right.
going down that way.
Right. So you did say in your, or the county did say in their recommendations that you have submitted this to the fire district. Have you gotten any feedback from them yet?
For the hammerheads,
Yeah.
they are in support of them.
They are?
And approved them. They sent us their standards on how they need to be built to make sure that they're
Okay,
built.
and what about the school district? What, I guess that's Wentzville Schools?
Yeah, so the school districts, what we have found, I don't have a letter from them yet, but that they don't usually go in the cul-de-sacs anyway. They pull off the main roads.
I see.
And so they'll have collection points depending on where it is. So down here, once this Deer Road, it'd either be here or right here on this entrance. And then they can come in through here along this parkway, and then there can be different stops through there, but they wouldn't go into the cul-de-sacs anyway.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any questions?
I do, just for the newcomer. A hammerhead, is that just a strip that has defined endpoints, or can you help to help some of us get a visual of kind of what the hammerhead looks like?
So if you can kind of see it right here, it basically comes in and then there's a drive aisle to the left and to the right. So
Okay.
basically you would pull in and back up the other way and then come back out.
Okay.
So, and what basically the standards that would be built to allows for delivery trucks, fire trucks, school bus, even a school bus, to be able to go in there and turn around and make that radius turn in there.
And there's no parking.
There's
allowed.
we'd have no parking signs in there,
So
correct?
same thing on the other side.
So right here,
Yeah. So no one's gonna be parking behind that house on a permanent
Yeah.
basis.
no. Yeah, and there is parking on, right, but it's not part of the hammerhead, it's off the hammerhead, and it would be for the CBU location, for the mailboxes.
Okay.
On the apartments, Now, where are there entrances to the street coming in? I couldn't quite, I don't know if there's any way of enlarging that. I
Yes,
couldn't quite
there
tell.
is. Let's see.
Can you tell where they're
So
coming
right
in now?
here's their entrance off, so highway in, they'll come in, and then they'll have their entrance right here to their parking lot that goes all the way
Okay.
around.
And so if they're making a right turn on, obviously, and they can just cut across and go that, and if they're going,
So if they need to make a,
left, they
yeah,
have
if
to
they
go
need to
right
make a
and
left, they
route
had to go right out of here, go back down to
route
Harvest
themselves
Parkway and go to
through
Hopewell
the
Road.
park.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
And this also does have its own detention as well.
Anyone online have any questions? Roger, Jennifer? Anyone else here? I'm sorry, Jennifer, couldn't hear you.
I don't have any questions, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I guess that's all we need from you right now, and we may have to ask you up to come later. So
thank you.
at this point, we'll open up to public comment. Please raise your right hand. You tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, under pains and penalty of perjury.
I do.
Please state your name and address for public records.
Thank you very much, members of the commission. My name is Arnie C. A.C. Dinoff, County Public Advocate, mailing address P.O. Box 1535 in O'Fallon.
Thank you.
The first thing I'd like to do is like to make a small statement. I'm all for development, but I would like to see in this case responsible and growth opportunity. As Robert had said, the Director of Planning, this is Missouri's fastest growing corridor. We really need to put some infrastructure and some traffic issues, safety issues into this corridor because every day, probably at least 50 new residents move into the Highway N corridor, which is keeps impeding and impacting a lot of delays and a lot of public services. We want to make sure that there's responsible and growth here, but we want to make sure that we have some offset to offset the residential to pay for the public services. So my question to the commissioners is where is the commercial component to offset the taxes to pay for services to protect not only the county, but the neighborhood and the residents? Now, the letters from our partner agencies, as you know, that's a big thing on my agenda. I would like to see the commission look at mandatory submittal by future applicants. We need to change our protocols, our policies, and our requirements. Just a simple text to an elected school board member on the Wentzville School District. He texted the superintendent and the director of transportation, and they don't even know about this project. So there's no letters from the school district in terms of the student population. As we all know, those adjoining Liberty High School, Frontier Middle School, Discovery Ridge, and other elementary schools are filled to the brim. So by Harvest alone is going to create the addition of an elementary school unto itself. And now this development is probably going to be another half of an elementary school. Right up the road, Dwello Elementary is filled to the brim. And so the school district has some really concerns about impact of services and impact of the student population. The school transportation issue, the school district claims that they haven't heard about this project. That letter has, not been received by the county. I'd like to find out what the truth is on this. The ambulance district and the fire protection district, in terms of the turning radius that was discussed. Ducker Creek Sanitary District, as was mentioned, it's probably going to be 2 or 3 years till this new sewer plant will be online. The Harvest neighborhood in the city of O'Fallon, which annexed from unincorporated county, that was passed by the O'Fallon City Council back in November and December. It's going to have 986 homes. The city of O'Fallon City Council and Planning Department limited the amount of permits to 100 homes until occupancy, until the sewer plant goes online. It also has a condition in the O'Fallon final plan for weekly dumping and removal of sewage from the property until the plant goes online. And like I said, I'd like to see that condition here. That's only fair, that we don't get ahead of ourselves and that we don't cause a public safety welfare issue. The entrance to the subdivision. In my opinion, a subdivision of this size needs 2 entrances. That's for public safety, to make sure that the proper services and proper emergency responding agencies have 2 different entrances. The Fire Protection District, at least Cottleville, I'm not sure Wentzville's fire code, but the Cottleville Fire Protection District, if you build over 100 homes, they definitely require 2 different separate entrances. And I believe a commissioner lives in the Cottleville Fire Protection District and can testify to that fact. Traffic issues. There needs to be, there's going to be a major impact on Missouri Highway N and Deer Road extension. I would recommend that the Planning and Zoning Commission institute a deceleration, acceleration lane at the developer's expense. Also, I'd like to see us get ahead of the curve and let's have some kind of pact or contract that the developer will donate the land necessary for the Deer Road extension and also the impact on the Highway N in terms of the frontage needed to expand that roadway, rather than have the taxpayers pay it at a premium dollar down the road. There needs to be major safety improvements at Highway N. The traffic count keeps going up on a weekly basis, and the amount of trips goes up dramatically on a daily basis. Let's get that right-of-way land donated by the developer as part of this deal in connection of the county approving their application. And the final issue I'd like to talk about is traffic calming within the development. I'm a proponent of the dips to ensure that children are safe and that the residents living there, it doesn't become the parkway doesn't become a speedway. Let's get that ironed out ahead of time here, rather than have county taxpayers pay for it on the other end when there's going to be a traffic issue or problem. And the tree preservation mitigation, I want to make sure that's fully met. That's been discussed. I guess I believe in staff or the community development director's determination, but that's really important that the tree preservation be intact. And it sounds like the developer is working to whittle that down or decrease that or decrease the amount of trees that are going to be impacted. Those are my concerns and those are my recommendations for the conditions. Or if there's any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
Maybe if we could bring the applicant back up. So I believe there are going to be actually 3 access points to this on Hopewell Road and 2 into the subdivision. Is that correct?
Correct. There's actually going to be 4 once Deer Road extension.
Okay.
So the southern portion would have 2 entrances once that Deer Road extension got extended. And then the single-family villas and apartments would all have 2 entrances as well.
Right. Now, are those roads in there, the streets, are they going to be public streets?
They will be public streets.
Okay. And in terms of whether that was dedicated or not, that would be something the county would review with the developer himself, correct?
For the entrance off Highway N, his plan that he submitted for his final or his improvement plans, from my conversation, he said it does show that and that it will be dedicated to the counties. And then
Okay, okay. And since the streets are going to be public anyway, then they wouldn't necessarily be part, okay.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any other questions?
Yeah, I do. You don't anticipate any building prior to the Duckett Creek sewer extension, or do you?
Lombardo Homes does not.
Okay.
If we did start building, it would be no occupancy until it came online. If there was a delay in construction, we might request to get started, but we wouldn't occupy it until we had actual sewer plant done and the lift station. In addition, there's a lift station that has to go in that has to be built by the other developer on Harvest to service this property as well.
And you guys are above them in terms of where the flow is, the gravity
Correct.
flow?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll gravity down to that lift station. That lift
Right.
station is what, and Duckett is sizing that lift station and paying for a portion of it to service the whole, basically from my understanding, the whole watershed up to Highway Z.
I'm sorry, you said that your development was paying a portion of it?
No, Duckett is paying a portion of it.
Yes.
And then they're passing it on in their TAP fees from the last conversations that we had with them. And that's for the whole watershed going up.
Okay. Anybody else have any other questions?
I have some questions for staff.
Okay.
Go ahead, Roger does.
Roger, go ahead.
In the autumn hall development being mixed use, will there be a homeowners association that covers any of these various sections?
Yes, there will be a homeowners association that will cover for the single family, and then there'll be an overall arching for the common areas, and then there'll probably be sub HOAs for the apartments. They'll handle their grounds, and then the villas will handle some of their ground, but there'll be some shared stuff that the whole development will have to share and will be part of one HOA.
Thank you.
Hey, Roger,
Yes,
what does Whitmore do for their villas compared to the housing? Is it all one HOA?
no, we have one large HOA for the entire development, and then the villas have a separate HOA, and the Pines and the Forest both have separate HOAs.
How do you guys get,
The entire development is covered by one large HOA.
okay, all right.
On a development like this, with there being a homeowners association, is it done, assessed according to square footage of improvements, or how does that?
So
is it
the way
number of
the
units?
overarching, the whole HOA, the large master one,
Uh-huh.
it'll be one fee. But we haven't structured that yet, but there'll probably be a different fee for the apartments compared to the single family, just based off of what they have. And that shared cost, that is basically just that parkway that comes down with some trees. And then the single family would be a larger, and then the villas would have a totally separate,
I see.
the same way with the apartments.
Right.
On how they're handled.
Now, I'm sure you've reviewed the parking situation with the county in terms of the apartments. How many spaces will you have in there?
I know we are meeting the amount that the county requires. I don't know the exact count on parking, but when we laid it out, it was to meet however many units is required per parking.
Gotcha.
If I could read the drawings about this.
Yeah, I know. That's what
They're about this big.
Yeah, so it's 2 parking spaces per
Two-
unit is
two
what's
per
laid
unit.
out.
Okay, thank you.
For the three-quarter entrance on Highway N, did MoDOT require any right-of-way dedication along those apartments at all, or did they state
So
anything?
there's 100, they want 150 foot of right of way, so we will be dedicating 75 foot on our side
Okay,
along the apartments.
Okay,
gotcha.
I think that's what was referred to. Yeah.
So does the developer reach out to the school districts and to the fire departments and to the?
We do, and we have reached out to them. We just don't have a letter from the school
And they
district,
didn't
but they're aware.
respond, or?
What's that?
Did they just not responded to you, or?
I know they've been behind on letters, and, but the conversation with Harvest was part of it.
Yeah.
Whenever we started talking, and we actually, when they redrew the lines, year and a half, 2 years ago, we actually had a conversation about where, and sat down with them as a developer and said, this is where everything's going. This is how many houses you're gonna have in the near future. And when Duckett has a plant, this whole highway end corridor. So, and they were in anticipation of knowing what was coming down that way. They just didn't know when.
Yeah, I mean, and this is where the growth's gonna go, there's no doubt about it, but, you know, I'm always concerned about, Winsville's I think it's the biggest school district now, if I'm not mistaken. And the growth out there is just completely crazy, so, I'm a little concerned about them not responding and not hearing from them in one way or another, you know, letter. Especially in a meeting like this, where we're approving tons and tons of, you know, new residents into a small acre area, as far as I'm concerned, so. I'm gonna ask staff a little bit about it too.
Okay.
Yep.
So I know you said you haven't heard back from them, but do you have your preliminary meetings with like the superintendent of the schools, or who do you have these, and what level are you having these
So
meetings?
we send the plans out to the superintendents whenever they have the school. And the superintendents review that and then send a letter saying about this in the school district.
Okay. And over how many period years do you anticipate that, is this going to be like a year, 2-year, 3-year development, you think?
This one will probably be at least a 3 to 4 year development.
So figuring 2 years from Duckett Creek, you're talking about closing this out essentially 6 years from now?
Correct.
Theoretically.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, that's all the questions. Anybody else? Okay, thank you. Anybody with questions for staff?
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about those letters that were sent to fire districts and
Yeah.
school districts, and comes up every time.
Yeah, right off the bat, we always notify all the relevant districts. We create a matrix on who needs to get notified for every preliminary plat, and we do so. We have letters on file. For school districts, sometimes they respond, sometimes they don't. In 25-plus years, I've never had a school district once say, we don't have capacity, so we don't want you to do this development. What they will comment on usually is, this cul-de-sac is not large enough, so we're not going to drive down that street. I mean, that's typically what they'll say. Or sometimes, when I've worked in communities with a municipal bus system, they'll want a bus turnout, those sorts of things. But anyway, the fire district, for instance, you may or may not know that a plat has to be reviewed and approved by both jurisdictions. So a plat has to be reviewed by the county and approved, and it has to be reviewed by the fire district and approved. So no matter what we do here, it's also going to go through the fire district approval as well. And if they don't get the approval, then that's not going to work for them. I would say
So what happens if we've approved it and the fire district says this doesn't meet the approval and we've
For the fire
approved the
code?
preliminary plat?
Then they would need to turn in revised plans, I suppose, to the fire district or apply for any relevant variances that they might need. And if the changes are substantial enough, they might need to come back through this body. But it's, given the fact that they're showing 2 different entrances, actually 4 in total to the outside connections. But what I'll call each pod, L3, I forgot the numbers, but L3, 4, 5, 6, whatever those numbers are. Each one of those has 2 different ways in and out. I think that's really helpful for them. It's not the same as some subdivisions where they want to have like 200 homes of one way in and one way out. This is a well-connected subdivision, I would say, with public streets. So there's not going to be gates on any of the entrances. We don't have to worry about that.
Do you see, with what you're seeing happen along, and it looks like we're getting a fair amount of requests on some commercial types of uses. It appears that you continue to have the strip commercials, centers that do develop along there in need of the, kind of as a response to the growing residential population.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on the tax basis of that many residents in a small area with, again, the relegation of taxes?
Well, I think that's why our overall master plan envisions primarily around the major intersections of arterial roadways, that there probably more commercial development around those intersections. This is a little bit away from those intersections, and it doesn't have a lot of frontage along Highway N. Instead, it's really, really deep. Most of the time, retail and commercial development, they love visibility, so they like to be visible from the main roadways. This, on the other hand, goes way back, and it's kind of long and narrow tract, and it's, kind of in the Hopewell Road corridor.
Right. The only area that would make sense is the area that's going to be the apartments for commercial development.
Right, and the apartments, what's beneficial about that is generally you want the development that generates the highest level of trips close to the major roadways, so that they're not having to drive through the lower density areas, and you can quickly get them onto the arterial roadways. And so that's the way they've designed it here.
I think there's going to be plenty of property tax.
What's that?
I think there's going to be plenty of property tax generated there to pay for a lot of.
You know what, the planning and zoning staff hasn't done.
Not for the county, but for the school district.
For school districts,
Yes,
okay.
all the special districts are going to do just fine.
We haven't done a tax analysis, but we don't normally do that as far as the
Right,
planning
right.
and
No, I
zoning
just
division.
wondered in terms of theoretically, you know, how you look at that.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else?
Just the notification of the schools, how much do you, Robert, is it 4 weeks in advance that they get to see the plans? Because there's probably a submittal date and it's a certain
Right.
amount of time from the.
The notice for this project, I went out in, I think, July,
I think August.
August, okay.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, it's been a while, and one of the reasons is because in order to get this project right and make sure we coordinate with the different jurisdictions, it's been forwarded to the next meeting. And a big part of that was to make sure we have the integration of streets. We have 2 different jurisdictions involved. We have the city of O'Fallon. So right across that, I think it's called Harvest Parkway, that's in O'Fallon. That area that was mentioned by Mr. Dienoff to the south, that future Dyer Road or Deer Road, however you want to pronounce that, that extension, that's actually not in this development. It's in an adjoining Harvest development in the city of O'Fallon. So we had to coordinate that extension with those developers and with that, with the city of O'Fallon and with the county road board.
So this particular property, that Harvest next to it, was annexed to O'Fallon? Okay,
was,
so they
very
were
recently.
part of the county, but they were annexed to O'Fallon.
Right, within the last 2 months. I can't remember the exact date, but it's been very recently. And as part of that annexation process, they went through the city of O'Fallon, they went to the O'Fallon City Council, they presented a plan unit development plan, they said, this is what we want to do, and it was approved at some level. I'm not sure if they have zoning approval level or preliminary plat approval, I'm not sure exactly what stage they're in.
So theoretically, Lombardo Homes could go to annex this property into the O'Fallon because it's adjacent to O'Fallon, correct? Or not?
It meets the adjacency requirements for annexation, so.
Okay. Okay.
They just want to come before us, not O'Fallon.
Obviously, that was a choice, obviously, that was a choice that they made.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah, it just was observation.
I guess the other question, so the traffic study said, Robert, all that was integrated with all the jurisdictions and it took into account all of these developments together as the way they looked at it.
Right,
It's a
yeah, both.
holistic traffic study to cover both subdivisions.
Right, and it does have a series of recommendations for off-sites improvements that I mentioned, although those are going to have to be, those improvements will have to be made if they want to connect to Highway N and to get MoDOT access. MoDOT's going to say, we'll give you access, but in order to do that, you've got to do X, Y, Z.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So at this point, bring it back to the board. Discussion?
Well, my first point, I think it's pretty obvious that they've gone through a fairly extensive planning thing, and this is not something that, they've approached lightly. I can remember when the storage thing came before us 5-6 months ago, this was already in the works.
Right.
I think it's a real indication of the growth of that area that we're talking about 2 years down the road before they, actually construct the first home probably. And obviously the importance of Duckett Creek. All of this would not have been even envisioned if it hadn't been for the plans
Right.
for the Duckett Creek, so that's my point.
So I guess, I know Doug said that they wouldn't be occupying until it was actually online. Do we need to add that in as a condition, or, I believe him, but on the other hand, do we need to, anybody have any thoughts on whether we should add that in?
Duckett Creek's not going to let you have your tap fees until they're ready to go. So I don't know if.
I don't think it's a big deal.
That's, if I could interject, I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure.
Interrupt, but in our subdivision regulations, it addresses that.
Okay.
It states that once you have preliminary plat approval, then you can apply for permits to start construction. For instance, you can have footing and foundation permits, but you cannot have an occupancy permit until it has sanitary sewer
Okay,
service.
good. Okay.
So it's already states
Fair
that in
enough.
the ordinance.
Fair enough. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, from my perspective, I think the things about the trees and the turnaround and those were answered. I don't know, anybody else have any thoughts? Now, I guess we're voting on two issues, correct? First of all, the variance are which would we say is, from your perspective, we're voting on first here?
You are, you would be either approving or denying the preliminary plat with variances.
Okay, so
you-
the variance already being part of the preliminary plan.
Yes, right. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of integrated with it. If, in order to get approval for the preliminary plat, you're also either recommending approval or denial for the variances. So obviously, if you're not in favor of the variances, that would not meet the technical requirements of the subdivision regulations, and you should recommend denial. But if you recommend a favor, that also means that you're recommending in favor of the variance as well for the, well, called the hammerhead turnarounds, meaning that they're not the traditional cul-de-sacs. You can't, in one, in one circular motion, you can't turn your vehicle around. You have
Right.
to.
I mean, you see that with people who have their houses fronting a busy street. They'll have that hammerhead to turn around rather than backing out on a
Yeah.
busy street, yeah. You see it. Okay. Okay, so do I have any further discussion on this, or do I have any motions on this application here, the PR E 21-18?
Motion for approval.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All righty. Very good. Mr. Fromm?
Yes.
Mr. Cornwell?
Yes.
Mr. Jackson?
Yes.
Ms. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Hollander?
Yes.
Mr. Shell?
Yes.
Mr. Ellis?
Yes.
And I vote yes. The motion passes 9-0. Approved. Okay, the next order of business is the, let's see, there were no tabled items. Now, on number 8, we have the approval of the meetings on, but that from the November 17th, 2021 meeting, but we do not have those links, so we will table that till next month if we could. And we'll then have the approval of both the November meeting and this meeting. Okay, so other business, any planning and zoning updates from anyone?
I'd like to welcome Kyle Shell as our newest commissioner, and maybe if you could tell everyone a little bit about your background. And
I live down in the New Melle area, and obviously happy to serve and be here tonight. I've grown up down in New Melle most of my life, and my family still lives down in that area as well. Have a lot of kind of other, I guess, civic boards and such that I serve on, involved in sports and recreation facility down in New Melle. Serve on actually the local fire board down there. My full-time job is actually in public entity insurance. So do a lot of business development and risk management for public entities across the region.
Great, great. Well, thank you so much. Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
yeah, thank you for volunteering. It means a lot to us. The other thing I would mention is, this is Kyle's first meeting, and this will be Ellie Marr's last meeting, because Ellie will be retiring.
Congratulations.
At the beginning of February. So I wanted to recognize Ellie, the fact that Ellie's been here since 1999, as I understand it. Has started out as a planner 1, planner 2, then became planner 2, planner 3, and now a senior planner. Before she came to the county, she worked at the state of Missouri in grants management and monitoring. And I would just like to add that wherever I go and whoever I talk to outside, they really recognize the fact that St. Charles County is one of the most effective floodplain management programs in the country, I think. I think it's even nationally recognized in terms of like local floodplain management. And I think one of the reasons for that is our strong leadership from Ellie Marr, and also, who's a certified floodplain manager. Also, you might know that Mark Price, one of our planners, is also a certified floodplain manager. And in the past, we've had others, including Jan Whipple. And just over the years, we've had great continuity and a really strong program. So I wanted to thank Ellie and others for everything they've done to make us who we are.
I think I've been on the commission too long. I've seen an awful lot of retirements of staff. Or they've got a really good retirement program. I'm not sure. Because she's way too young to be retired.
And I'd like to thank Ally. I've asked her a lot of dumb questions over the last few years.
And she smiled. Right
And she
through them all.
smiled and answered them. All
Yes,
right.
what do you got planned?
Well, actually, I'm going to semi-retire. One of the things I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be the executive director for the Missouri Floodplain and Stormwater Managers Association.
Oh, great. Can't get away from it.
That's wonderful.
Can't get away from it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again.
So we can call her with questions.
Yeah.
That's what she's saying.
Very good.
Thank you.
So, there are no other items. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Oh, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, second, okay. Roger, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I'll have to admit that it was 70 degrees and I played golf this afternoon.
Well.
Okay, we will scratch
Wait,
that
wait.
last comment.
Wait. Roger, can you see me right now? Okay, just think about what I'm really saying right now.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Adjourned.